All right, I'm hopeful that our tech problems have been resolved. If anyone can hear me now, could you let me know that in the chat box? Yes? People? Yes, yay, okay. Let's resume. I apologize, you all missed a lot of information about who we are at NCSL and my great colleagues and all the rest, but that's not as important right now. So let's go ahead, yes, yes, yes. When you guys are typing yes, can you also just say what state you're calling from? We're just sort of curious. We got a whole lot of people on the line right now and just want to have a sense what states are represented. So as you're typing the state you're calling from, I am just going to move right on and let you know, we know that this topic is of great interest, and so I'm really thankful for the generous support of our funders to bring you this webinar today. NCSL acknowledges and thanks 0 to 3 for financially supporting our work. This session was made possible with funding from 0 to 3 as part of Think Babies, which was developed to make the potential of every baby a national priority. Funding partners for Think Babies include the Perigee Fund and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which supports the public education aspects of Think Babies. Our partnership with 0 to 3 and the Think Babies campaign has produced a handful of resources that many of you on the line might find helpful. Just 3 months ago, we hosted a webinar on the State of Babies Yearbook, now archived for you to access. Last year, we authored a guide to help infant and toddler professionals understand how state legislatures work and how state legislators gather information and develop policies related to early childhood. And as many of you know, state legislators can play a significant role in helping infants and toddlers and their families thrive. Last year's brief explored related legislative activities and trends. We're really excited to have with us today 2 experts to talk to us about the topic. First, we'll hear from Jamie Colvard around some of the reasons paid family and medical leave are being considered across the country. And then we'll explore state action around paid family and medical leave and hear from my NCSL colleague from our Fiscal Affairs program, Jackson Brainerd. Jamie is the Director of State Policy at 0 to 3, where she leads the Policy Center's effort to support states in establishing coordinated, comprehensive systems and policies to meet the needs of infants, toddlers, and their children. Her work is focused on issues such as home visiting, early childhood mental health, early care and education, paid family and medical leave, and cross-agency collaboration. While many of you probably assume that Jamie is calling from Washington, D.C., she's not. She lives in Portland, Oregon, and that's where she's going to share information with us today. Also, we have Jackson, a Senior Policy Specialist with the NCSL Fiscal Affairs Program, and that program provides state legislators and staff with outreach and policy analysis on a wide range of state fiscal issues. In this capacity, he oversees state tax and economic development policy and has authored many articles and publications on those subjects. He also recently got engaged, so congratulations to Jackson. Since we had a little bit of a delay, I think we'll forego our polling question and just move on with the show. So, Jamie, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Allison. I'm excited to be here with all of you and excited by the great turnout. So as you can guess from the title on my slide, I'm really going to be talking today about the importance of paid family medical leave from a child development perspective. There's growing momentum for paid family medical leave across the country, both at the state and the federal levels, and there's many people and organizations working on this issue. And through Think Babies and 0 to 3's other efforts at the state and federal levels, we're really working to connect the research about child development and early experiences with public policy. So just quickly, for those of you that might not be familiar with 0 to 3, we're a national nonprofit organization that was founded over 40 years ago by leading researchers and clinicians in diverse disciplines focused on child development. At 0 to 3, we work to ensure that babies and toddlers benefit from the early connections that are critical to their well-being And our mission is really to ensure that all babies and toddlers have a strong start in life. And we envision a society that has the knowledge and the will to support all babies in reaching their full potential. And so to do that, we really focus on a few key audiences. We work to support parents with resources that help them connect more positively and deeply with their children. We support professionals that work with infants and toddlers in a variety of settings to help them have the knowledge and tools to support children's healthy development. And then where I fit in is through our policy center, where we really serve as a resource to policymakers and advocates at the state and federal levels to advance comprehensive policies that really support and strengthen families. So why are we talking about infants and toddlers on a webinar about paid family and medical leave? We know from science that the early years are really critical for healthy development, and that the domains of development are interrelated and build on one another. During the first 3 years of life, the brain undergoes its most dramatic development. Not only are babies learning to scoot, crawl, and then walk, but they're acquiring the ability to think and to speak, to learn and reason, and form relationships with the people around them. The early experiences of young children will shape the architecture of their brains in enduring ways and build the foundation, whether strong or weak, for their future development. Now, I'm sure some of you may have seen this slide before, but I feel like it bears repeating, that the science is really clear. Our brains are growing faster in the first 3 years of life than at any later point, forming more than 1 million new neural connections every second. And when babies have nurturing relationships, positive early childhood experiences, positive early learning experiences, and good health and nutrition, these neural connections are stimulated and strengthened and lay the foundation for the rest of their lives. When babies don't get what their growing brains need to thrive, they don't develop as they should, and that can lead to lifelong developmental, educational, social, and health challenges. But just like when you're building a house, it's much easier to build a strong foundation at the beginning than go back and fix a weak one later. And as we think about young children's development, I love this quote from the researcher Donald Winnicott from 1947. He said that there's no such thing as a baby. If you set out to describe a baby, you will find you're describing a baby and someone. Babies' development is happening in the context of their relationships. So when we're thinking about how we can promote young children's healthy development, we really need to think about the relationships and the environments where they're growing up. And research demonstrates that forming secure attachments to a few caring and responsive adults is a primary developmental milestone for babies in their first year. Just think about what that means for a minute. The time after the birth or adoption of a baby is an essential time of development for babies and for families, because these early relationships really do nurture brain connections. Parents and caregivers are on the front lines of preparing our future workers, parents, and leaders. For babies, every minute and every interaction is really a lesson in how the world works, how they're valued, and how people relate to one another. So caring, consistent relationships experienced by young children help establish their ability to learn, to form positive relationships later in life, to exercise self-control. Yeah?
We lost audio again, so hold on just a moment. I'm going to hang up and try to dial back in.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's not you at all.
Sorry, everyone, that it seems that we're having some technology difficulties, but I'm going to keep going because it sounds like it's working now for people. So I was saying that, these consistent caring relationships really help children develop the skills they need for success in school and life, including, how they form relationships later, how they learn to exercise self-control, to mitigate stress, and really give a child a sense of competence and efficacy. And these relationships are important for all infants and toddlers, but they play a particularly important function for those that are growing up in lower income families because they can serve as a buffer against the multiple risk factors that these children may face. Now, we know from research that these relationships begin forming immediately. Babies are social. They actively seek out the human face, and they prefer to interact and communicate with others. So as you can see on the slide, children start to show a preference for a caregiver, in the first few days of life. Within a month, they know which characteristics like voice or touch go together with certain people. And by 3 months, they can tell the difference between voices, and they prefer the ones that are familiar to them. And by 4 months, they're beginning to form expectations about what their caregivers will be like. Are they gentle and pleasant and responding to their needs and their cues, or are they upsetting or unavailable? Babies will start to adapt their behaviors to these expectations. When babies feel safe and secure and deeply sure that there's special people that they're forming these strong attachments with are going to be there for them, they feel safe to explore and to learn. And we know how critical that is, as they are developing, as they get to school and going forward. So all infants need ample time with their parents at the very beginning of their lives to form these critical relationships. And there are a variety of critical things that families need this sort of unhurried time in the first year in order to do. Just to reiterate, I've been talking so much about these relationships and the importance, but parents and babies need this time for parents to really become responsive caregivers and establish a pattern that will set their children up for success. The better parents know their babies, the more readily they'll recognize even the most subtle cues that indicate what children need to promote their healthy growth and development. For example, early on, babies are learning to regulate their eating and sleeping patterns and their emotions. If parents can recognize and respond to their baby's cues, they'll be better able to soothe their children and give them what they need and make them feel safe and secure in their new world. Trust and emotional security then help the baby to explore with confidence and to communicate with others, which will be important as they further develop. Families also need time to attend well child visits and ensure their children receive all their necessary vaccinations. The AAP recommends 8 well baby checks in the baby's first year, and getting to all of those appointments can be really difficult for working parents if they don't have paid family and medical leave. Families also need time to facilitate breastfeeding, attend to a child's early medical needs, and identify and intervene in a variety of developmental difficulties if they come up. It's especially critical for caregivers of infants who were born preterm or with low birth weights and those who have illnesses or birth defects. We know that early detection of potential developmental delays or health problems is important to really effectively address them early on. And we also know that that's more cost effective than waiting and not identifying those things early. Parents also need time to attend to their own health. After the birth of a child, mothers may need time both to recover or to address issues that come about. If a mother is facing postpartum depression, paid family leave may give her time to connect with resources to begin addressing that. So, how do we ensure all families have this unhurried time that they need to establish relationships and to attend to their children's health? we really need paid family medical leave. And I want to just pause and underscore that, I'm talking a lot about the importance of giving time for parents to bond with their new children and attend to their health. But we know that parents also need medical leave, paid medical leave, when other situations require family caregiving. For example, if children suffer from chronic illnesses, or need surgery to correct congenital issues, or if a parent contracts a disease such as cancer that requires ongoing treatment, or an elderly parent needs care following a health event, we know that caregiving for these things falls on family members. So although I'm really focusing today on how paid family medical leave can support babies' healthy development, I really want to underscore that it's important that we think about paid family medical leave covering the full range of situations where families may need leave. So when I'm talking about paid family medical leave, what do I mean? What does it look like? We looked at this checklist to describe what a program that will really support families and babies looks like. So I'll just walk through these pieces. One, it needs to be affordable and cost-effective and sustainably funded, and funded in a way that's not cutting or reducing benefits from programs that people are already relying on. It needs to be inclusive of all working people, covering workers in all companies, no matter of their size, and younger, part-time, lower wage, contingent, and self-employed workers really need to be eligible for benefits as well. It also needs to be inclusive when you think about how a program is defining family, who a worker can take leave to care for. It needs to be substantial and provide a meaningful duration of leave, at least 12 weeks, and a wage replacement rate that makes taking leave financially possible for all working people, ensuring that lower and middle income workers have a higher share of their wages replaced as a way that can make it possible for them to take advantage of paid family medical leave. This is really essential if a program is going to be equitable. It also needs to be comprehensive of working people's needs, such as for their own serious health conditions, including pregnancy and childbirth recovery, time for parents to bond with and care for a newborn or newly adopted child, care for a parent, child, spouse, or domestic partner with a serious health condition, and also for particular military caregiving and leave purposes. So really thinking about all of the reasons that you may be caring for a family member. And then lastly, it needs to be secure. So it needs to be workers who take advantage of paid family medical leave need to know that they won't be retaliated against, that their jobs are secure, that they can come back to them, and they won't face any hardship as a result of taking leave. These are really the key elements that create crucial job and financial security so that employees can take the time they need to heal, to provide the nurturing their babies need to get a strong start, and then get back to work more focused and confident. So does it work? This slide shows some of the benefits of paid family and medical leave, and I've sort of chunked them out into benefits for infants and toddlers, for the family, and then sort of as a whole. And I'll just walk through a few of these. As I've stressed already, paid family medical leave really does give parents the time they need to get to know their newborns and adjust to a new routine and start building those really important relationships. Studies have shown that children whose families have paid family and medical leave have higher rates of immunizations and participation in those well-child checkups. And these practices can lower infant mortality and reduce the occurrence and length of childhood illnesses. They can also reduce private and public health expenditures. And, those well-child visits are, so important for the baby's health, but it's also a great opportunity for parents to be talking to pediatricians about sometimes their own health, asking questions about their babies, learning how to sort of meet their children's needs. So that's really important. Studies show also that paid leave yields higher rates of breastfeeding, which can reduce rates of childhood infections and decrease maternal stress. Paid leave also improves outcomes for the entire family, including parents and caregivers. It can reduce parents' anxiety over making ends meet and provide that job security and consistent income that they need during this really, huge time of change for the family. A report that was done in Rhode Island after their paid family leave was enacted found that employees were more likely to report better health, lower stress, and higher satisfaction in their ability to care for their new children and arrange after taking advantage of the paid leave. It's also associated with health benefits for new mothers, including declines in depressive symptoms and improvement in overall health. And I'll also say that there are also studies looking at fathers' use of paid family medical leave to bond with their babies. And studies have shown that fathers who take 2 or more weeks off after the birth of a child are more involved in that child's direct care 9 months later than fathers who didn't take any leave. And we know that having involvement of both parents is just so critical to children's development. And then looking at sort of the benefits for employers, taxpayers, and the economy as a whole, not only is it important to give all babies a strong start in life, and this is one way to make sure that they're getting that, but paid family medical leave also increases the likelihood that workers will return to work after childbirth. It improves employee morale. Organizations where paid family medical leave is in place have said that it has a neutral or positive effect on their business. And it also reduces costs to employers by increasing employee retention. I've shared how important the first months and years of life are for children's healthy development and the critical role that parents play and the benefits paid family medical leave can have on babies, families, and society. So surely we all have it, right? Well, I suspect you wouldn't be here if you didn't know that that's not the case. So just a few statistics on this slide. Only 17% of all working people in the United States have access to paid leave through their employers. We do have the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, which provides unpaid leave, but nearly half of employees eligible for it have reported that they can't afford to take it because it's unpaid. And a full 40% of the workforce isn't even covered by FMLA because they don't meet the eligibility requirements. And then according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 1 in 4 women in America return to work just 10 days after giving birth because they don't have access to paid leave. I'm a mother of 2, and I have to say I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. So this is just not an equitable system. We know that unhurried time in the first year of life is important for so many reasons, and that situations will likely come up outside of that period when families need paid family medical leave to care for themselves or family members. And it's really troubling that it depends on where you work or where you live, whether or not you have access to this. So I know Jackson's going to get into the details of how states are addressing this issue. I'll just say that momentum is growing. 9 states have passed paid family medical leave laws. Some of them are looking at strengthening their existing laws, and new states are exploring this. And this is very exciting. It's also being talked about at the federal level. So 0 to 3 has several resources that dig deeper into things that I talked about today and share additional statistics. Some of our Think Baby state partners have also developed fact sheets that go into the context of their specific states as well. So I know those will be available, and I encourage you to check them out if you're interested. But now I'll turn things back over to you, Allison.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate your information. Thank you, everyone, for staying on the line with us and hopefully figuring out how to hear all of Jamie's great information. Do know we are going to have an archive of this available on our web shortly. So if you missed bits and pieces, there will be an opportunity to hear it in its entirety. So now we're going to learn a bit about the landscape and states' activities related to paid medical and family leave. We know things are changing rapidly right now, especially with states in session, and so we're really happy to have Jackson Brainerd from NCSL's Fiscal Affairs Program here to share some of the latest and greatest of what's happening around the country. So Jackson, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Allison, and thanks, Jamie, and to everyone joining us. Again, I'm Jackson Brainerd. I'm with NCSL's Fiscal Affairs Program. Going to give you a quick rundown of trends in paid family leave proposals and some of the significant policy considerations that states have incorporated into the laws that they have enacted. As Jamie mentioned, this is a topic that's been building a bit of momentum over the last few years, so it is a timely conversation to have. So it's just a bit of quick background. As Jamie mentioned, the Family and Medical Leave Act governs access to family leave at the federal level, provides 12 weeks of job-protected unpaid leave to care for newborns, a seriously ill family member, or tend to one's own serious medical condition. Again, these protections don't apply to a significant percentage of the workforce, so even when it comes to unpaid leave, there are coverage gaps. And while states have taken steps to expand these unpaid leave benefits by increasing the amount of leave time offered or expanding the definition of an eligible family member that can be cared for, the fundamental problem in the eyes of paid family leave proponents is that most workers won't take unpaid family leave offered through FMLA because they can't afford to. So in the absence of federal action on this issue, states have been getting the ball rolling on paid family leave themselves. 8 states and D.C. have approved paid family leave legislation. California was the first state to get a program off the ground in 2004. They were followed by New Jersey in 2009 and Rhode Island in 2014. And since 2016, we've seen a bit of a pickup in state enactments. In order, the states that have approved paid family leave laws in the last few years include New York, Washington State, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Oregon. Of these more recent states, most programs have either just become operational or have not yet taken effect yet. D.C.'s program will get off the ground this July. Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Oregon won't start paying benefits until 2021, 2022, and 2023, respectively. So here's a map of paid family leave proposals in 2019. At least 26 states proposed legislation to create a family and medical leave insurance program. Again, we saw Oregon and Connecticut enact measures along these lines. Colorado had a lengthy debate on the topic before ultimately settling for a study bill. New Hampshire's legislature approved a paid family leave bill, but it was vetoed by the governor. Here's what's been proposed in 2020 as of a few days ago. As far as I'm aware, 20 states have put forward legislation to create paid family leave insurance programs. I assume this map will become more colorful in the coming weeks and months. I've added several states to it just in the last week. Vermont is the big story of 2020 so far. A couple weeks ago, their Senate approved a paid family leave bill with a veto-proof majority. The governor did veto that a couple days ago. So if the legislature can muster the votes for an override, they'll be the 9th state with a paid family leave law. So conveniently, we've got a state that might have a brand new law, so I'll try to note how it compares with what the rest of the states have adopted so far as I run through the rest of this presentation. So getting to what has been adopted in the states with paid family leave laws. In all the states like FMLA, you can take leave to care for a newborn or adopted child or newly placed foster child, a seriously ill family member, or your own serious health condition. Several states provide paid family leave for military caregivers. Last year, we saw 3 states adopt provisions to provide paid safe leave to victims of domestic or sexual abuse. The early adopting paid family leave states set leave periods between 4 to 6 weeks. The rest of the states have been a bit more generous in this respect. DC is at 8 weeks for parental leave. The rest of the states allow up to 12. In New York, the length of the leave and benefit amount have been phased in gradually through 2021. So the program's first year, 2018, workers were eligible for 8 weeks, and by 2021, they'll be eligible for 12. New Jersey went back in 2018 and expanded the length of leave from 6 to 12 weeks, so that 3-month leave period has become the most common. Vermont's pending legislation provides 12 weeks for parental leave as well, 8 weeks for medical care leave. The first 4 states to adopt paid family leave, not so coincidentally, happen to be 4 of the 5 states in the nation with pre-existing temporary disability insurance programs. These provide partial wage replacement for workers who are unable to work due to non-work-related injuries or illnesses, and that includes pregnancy. So these states were able to run their paid family leave programs through these structures that were already in place, which was a bit less of an administrative lift. The others had to create new funds, which are generally overseen by their state treasuries, and the programs are usually administered by relevant labor departments or agencies created within them. All of the existing paid family leave programs are funded through a payroll tax, usually at a rate less than 1%. Most states have set caps for the maximum earnings that can be subject to tax. Generally, these are either comparable to or explicitly based on the Social Security contribution base, which is $137,000 in 2020. Any wages earned above that amount are not subject to tax. The exceptions here are DC, which has no cap, and Rhode Island and New York, which have much lower caps than the rest of the states. Most of the states also place this tax burden entirely on employees. This is partly to assuage concerns about the impact paid family leave policies might have on businesses. The exception, again, is DC, which is entirely employer-funded. In Massachusetts and Washington, larger employers share the costs of medical leave, while smaller employers can opt out of contributing. In Oregon, larger employers share the cost of both family and medical leave, with employers paying 40% of the cost. This graphic here just provides an example of how the contribution breaks down in Massachusetts. You see employees make up the entire family leave portion of the contribution. Wage replacement amounts vary by state, as do the caps for weekly benefit amounts. The states with the highest weekly caps aren't necessarily the most generous because obviously it depends on where you're starting from. For lower income workers, a higher wage replacement level is going to be more impactful. California has a relatively low wage replacement level compared to the other states. Reviews of the program have found that those with incomes in the lowest brackets were the smallest proportion of claimants still couldn't take leave at the wage replacement level the state was offering. The states that have adopted paid family leave laws more recently, again, tend to have higher wage replacement percentages, between 80 to 100%. Last year, we saw New Jersey fall in line with this trend. They approved legislation to increase their wage replacement percentage from 2/3 of a worker's average weekly wage to 85%. The measure in Vermont is looking to act has a wage replacement percentage of 90%. So again, right in line with what the other states have proposed. You can see that some of these benefit calculations are a little convoluted. In several states, you get a certain percentage of your average weekly wage up to a certain amount, and then a lesser percentage beyond that. Here's a little graphic that shows how those calculations work in Washington, but it's similar for the several states that have formulas along these lines. Family members that are covered for medical care leave purposes vary. Again, in the beginning, the laws were narrower and tended to be more specific to immediate family. California went back and expanded their definition of family member to include grandparents as well as in-laws parents. You can see other states have landed there as well. Some include siblings, and DC includes siblings in law. Last year, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Oregon all enacted the broadest definition of family member, which is all that the other states include, in addition to any individual with an association equivalent to a family relationship, so moving beyond blood and marriage there. Again, most of the state programs that have been enacted have either just gone into effect or are not yet operational. So there's really only good data available on existing programs from 3 states, California, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. California's paid leave program is more than 15 years old, so it's had a lot of time to study it over the years. In fiscal year 2019, they had just under 300,000 claims filed. That's out of more than 18.3 million employees that are covered under the paid family leave law. So it's only about 1.5% are taking the state up on this benefit. Most of the claims are used for parental leave rather than medical care leave, and that's comparable with the other states. In Rhode Island, about 80% of leave claims are for bonding with a child, and about 85% of claims are for bonding with a child in New Jersey. The average weeks per claim in California has been gradually taking closer to the full 6 weeks allowed. And to give you an idea of how large these programs are, total benefits paid in fiscal year 2019 was just over $1 billion. California had about $144 billion in general fund spending in fiscal year 2019. So relative to overall state spending, the programs aren't that big. The State Senate Office of Research in California did a comprehensive review of the state's paid family leave program 10 years in and came away with a number of insights and suggested improvements. When the program first began, men made up only 17.3% of claims in the first year, and that number has increased significantly. They made up 38% of bonding claims in 2019. Desire to have more balanced gender composition in leave taking is due to the notion that it could reduce discrimination towards women of childbearing age in the hiring process. California's Senate Office of Research also found that the program, again, didn't do a great job of targeting low-income workers. And to make the program more equitable, they proposed increasing the wage replacement rate, offering job protection, and increasing outreach and public education efforts because it seemed that lower wage workers were less likely to know about the program than others. Moving on to New Jersey, they had 35,000 claims filed relative to almost 4 million employees covered by the program. Again, the program paid out about $99.2 million in benefits in 2018. And again, to give you some perspective, the total state budget was about $37.4 billion in 2018. Like California, there appears to be a gap in terms of the number of men who take leave compared to the number of women. 76% of eligible family and medical leave claimants were females under the age of 45. There's also some evidence from New Jersey in terms of the impact paid family leave has had on businesses. 2014, the Center on Economic Policy published the results of a survey that was sent out to 18 employers of varying size from different industries. The results showed that none of the employers reported an impact on productivity or turnover. Most reported no impact on profitability, but a couple said there was a negative impact and a couple said there was a positive impact. Several reported a boost to employee morale, while a couple noted mixed effects. The majority reported no increase in administrative paperwork, but 8 found a slight to moderate increase. And finally, some employers reported a lack of program awareness among employees. This is a common theme among these states. Apparently, even some HR professionals were confused or unaware of the paid leave provisions 4 years into the program. So again, highlighting a need for better outreach and public education on the availability of this benefit. Moving on to Rhode Island. Again, they had a little over 10,000 people filing paid family leave claims every year. They paid $13.3 million in benefits in 2019. There's a bit of data regarding employees in Rhode Island. In a survey of 800 employees submitted to the U.S. Department of Labor Women's Bureau 1 year into Rhode Island's program, they found, again, familiar issues, significant gaps in awareness. Only half of workers were aware of the program. Fewer were aware of the specifics. The majority of leave takers reported that they had a coworker take up their duties for them. 70% of those who had to cover for a coworker did not report having a positive and negative impact due to having their coworker out, but 12% of employees did report a negative impact. So thus far, the presentation has been specific to family and medical leave insurance programs, but there are other approaches to paid leave being offered. I mentioned Puerto Rico. They passed a paid family leave law in 2017, but that's simply a mandate on employers to pay workers out on maternity leave their full wage. It didn't require the creation of an insurance program or a new payroll tax. A couple other proposals in the states along these lines, although I haven't seen any progress very far. Others would prefer that paid family leave continue to be a private sector prerogative and not create a government-supported program to provide it. And in this vein, there have been a number of alternatives offered. Providing businesses tax credits to offset some of the costs of providing paid family leave is an idea that's been floated in several states. I haven't seen anyone actually adopt a credit like this. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 at the federal level created a new tax credit for businesses that provide paid family medical leave for their lower wage employees, and that is currently up for renewal, so something to keep an eye on there. Then you have voluntary programs, again, voluntary for businesses to opt into. Measures have been proposed in Indiana and Minnesota along these lines. Probably the most prominent voluntary proposal came from the governors of Vermont and New Hampshire last year. A big concern with voluntary programs is that the insurance pool won't be big enough to cover the costs, so they proposed leveraging their state employees to create a combined insurance pool that businesses from both states could join. It seems the governors in these states still support voluntary leave programs, but the idea of this two-state solution has fizzled for the time being. A measure proposed in Connecticut would have authorized the creation of tax-advantaged savings accounts to help employees plan and save for childbirth, and a similar measure has been proposed at the federal level. And then finally, a number of states have also been having more limited discussions about whether to provide paid family leave benefits to state employees. At least 5 introduced measures on this in 2019, and there have been several executive orders signed over the last few years to mandate paid family leave for state employees. Just within the last month or so alone, the governors of Idaho, New Mexico, and Tennessee have all issued executive orders to provide paid family leave for state workers. There are now at least 18 states in D.C. that have or intend to provide paid leave for state employees, and 10 of them implemented these policies within the last 2 years. Finally, on the federal activity, proposals at the federal level largely mirror state proposals. There are a couple Democratic bills that have been introduced to establish a national paid family and medical leave insurance program. I don't know that anyone expects this Congress to push something like that through in 2020. President Trump has called for providing access to paid family leave in his budget proposals, but it's never been clear if that means some kind of comprehensive government policy or tax incentives to encourage business to offer it. But again, you see a focus on public sector workers. Federal employees are now going to be eligible for 12 weeks of paid parental leave due to a provision that was recently incorporated in the National Defense Authorization Act. Parental savings accounts have also been proposed at the federal level, and the tax credit from the TCJA is also up for renewal. A unique proposal at the federal level has been put forward by Senator Rubio. Legislation introduced in the House and Senate would offer new parents the option of collecting Social Security benefits for either 2 or 3 months in return for deferring their retirement age for the period necessary to offset the cost. So that's my quick overview of the state of paid family leave, and happy to see what questions we have now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackson. Thank you, Jamie, both of you, for a great presentation and a lot of rich information. I've been seeing a few comments coming through in the chat box. And thank you also, Jamie, for passing on that national partnership PDF or that website. Hopefully that has a lot of information that's helpful to folks. But one question, and I'm curious if either of our presenters want to make any sort of general statement. We have a question about how a voluntary program works. What does voluntary mean? I don't know.
So that just means that the businesses are not required to obtain paid family leave insurance, and they can opt in to a program if they so choose.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Jackson. And then it looks like we have another question. Of the 8 or 9 states that have passed laws, how do they treat governmental employees?
It varies. A few states include public sector workers specifically. Others do not. And say if you have a collective bargaining agreement, you can opt in. But it's about, I think, half of the states with paid family leave laws do not cover public sector workers.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to add to either of those questions?
No, I think that covers it. Thanks.
Okay. I wonder if people have other questions or clarifications, do feel free to just go ahead and type them in the chat box. In the event that we run out of time without answering all your questions, if you start thinking of some others closer to the top of the hour, you can feel free. We'll have some slides with our email information. You can feel free to email us after the fact, and we can try to respond to them. I do see a question. I've got one question I'd like to ask also, but I do see a question. How does the pending federal bill treat existent state programs? I don't.
I actually am not sure, but I don't want to hazard a guess at that.
That's fair.
My guess is that they would preempt them, but. Okay.
Gregory, good question. We can see if we can find an answer, and we'll send information back out to the group after the fact. Yes, thank you, Jenny. The webinar will be archived on our website shortly. The PowerPoint presentation as a PDF is already available there. And as you all are actually looking on your slide, there's an event resource tab, and you should be able to download the PowerPoint now as you're looking at your computer screen. Okay, there's a...
So it looks like we have a question on the, I'm going to guess that is the savings account.
Clarissa, we're looking into information.
So that is just allowing people to set aside a certain amount of money in a savings account that is tax exempt to encourage them to save up. And that's I'm only aware of one state that has proposed that at this time.
Okay. And then actually, just because I know Storm works in the Wisconsin legislature, I'd like to read this question next. Are there studies that show the benefit to society and taxpayers? For example, how it reduces child abuse and neglect costs, healthcare costs, etc. That's a good question. Actually, I wonder, Jamie, do you have any information that you could share on that? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, so there have been a number of studies, some looking at, programs in states here that Jackson talked about, but there have also been studies that look at other countries that have obviously much more robust paid family medical leave. So yes, there have been studies that look at some of those outcomes. And I'm happy to, I think some of the resources we've shared already reference some of those, but I'm happy to share some additional ones as well. That'd be helpful.
Okay, that's great, thank you. As a note to all of you that are on the line, I'll send an email out later today with some of the resources that we sort of quickly mentioned so that you at least have everything in one spot along with the PowerPoint presentation. And then once everything is archived, we'll send another note out. There was one other question I want to see. Is there a repository on the number of workers covered by paid leave programs by the state?
I collected that on a state-by-state basis. I'm happy to share that data with you. Michelle, I'm not aware of anyone that has a centralized place to put that data.
Keep it all? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Sure. Lauren, do you want to just, I guess we can scroll back through, but what state are you calling from? I'm curious. Good point, Gregory. Thank you. Are there any other questions that are, because we have these two experts available to us right now, are there any other questions being clarifying something that ends in a question mark for one of our experts to answer while we're on the line? I'll just give another second to see if we have any real clarifiers coming through. No? Okay. So, yeah.
Lauren, your question regarding state employees, Jackson had mentioned a handful of states that have passed that legislation recently. Are you interested in the legislation that made those possible, or what, I guess, around state employees?
Yeah, okay.
It was Connecticut that proposed the savings program, Clarissa. And I don't have the bill number on me, but I can send that to you.
And when will the NDAA go into effect? Okay. Michelle, Lauren, unless Jamie is following along or Jackson has a quick question to say right now, we can do a little more research and get back in touch with both of you. Does that work, Jackson?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
Don't really track the federal election.
Yeah, that's a piece to keep in mind also, knowing that NCSL, what the work is we do here in the States. So some of this is a little out of our wheelhouse perhaps. Okay. I'm sorry guys, it turns out it's really difficult to talk and read at the same time. I think it's like walking and chewing gum, so this is tough right now. We've got just a few minutes left. Thank you. Feel free to keep sharing the information here. And like I said, we will reconnect with everyone with some additional information. In the interest of time, though, I do want to just transition. I want to say thank you very, very much to both Jackson and to Jamie. And thank you to all of you for staying with us on the line today through even some sound quality issues. I hope you found this interesting and learned something. On the webpage here are a few different resources related to the ECE project and also 0 to 3, and then a legis brief that Jackson did a few years ago on paid family leave. So this would be a good area for you to sort of start finding some places that could be of interest. At the end of the webinar, you will see a short survey pop up on your screen, and I would really welcome you to take just a moment of your time to let us know how this worked, didn't work, things like that. I believe there's a question to ask about other topics you might want to hear about in the future, and I would welcome, if this is something you want to dig into a bit more in the future, just getting a sense from you all on the line, what you thought of this topic and what are others that you'd like to cover. And I'll share that in 2 weeks we'll have another webinar specifically on prenatal to age 3 with the Pritzker Children's Initiative and Dr. Cynthia Osborne from the University of Texas at Austin, and so that's something that might be of interest to many of you on the line today. I think with that, I'll give you your day back, and thank you all so much for participating, and have a great rest of your afternoon.